Hello, I'm Stephanie Ruff.
And I'm Aviva Nebeski.
We're the hosts of the Dressage Today podcast, where you can find us talking about anything and everything dressage related. Our conversations span the world of dressage, from leading riders to local level dressage heroes. We're talking training advice, showing tips, and sharing stories to inspire your own dressage journey. So tune in, then tack up. Welcome back to the Dressage Today podcast, sponsored by Horse Week. Today, Aviva and I will be talking to a wonderful instructor who Aviva has had to her farm several times a year. Her name's Felicia Chandler. And Aviva, how did you discover her?
Well, several years ago, Robert Dover did a reality TV series about America's Next Dressage Star.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to buy the series on DVD, and I watched it, and Felicia was the winner. And so I always remembered her name. Her name was always in the back of my head. And then during this year, when we've become a little bit more concerned finally with creating diversity in the dressage community, the equestrian community, and some of the racial biases that people have expressed and the things that have happened, Felicia wrote an article for one of the magazines, and it was a very articulate article. It was very well thought out. It was very well written. But one of the things that she said that moved me more than anything was she talked about her very first dressage instructor, actually her very first riding instructor. And not only did she mention her very first riding instructor, but she mentioned her by name. And Felicia is a Grand Prix rider. She won Robert Dover's challenge. She was his assistant trainer for a year. She's a really big deal. And yet she gave credit to her very first ever riding instructor. And her very first riding instructor is a woman named Lydia Wainwright. And Lydia happens to be a friend of mine and has taken lessons with me in the past. And I just thought it took a very special person to be able to talk about Lydia in the same sentence that she talked about Robert Dover.
Yeah.
So when I read the article last year, I said something, I think I might have posted something on Facebook, and I acknowledged Lydia, and Lydia got in touch with me and told me that she was working on getting Felicia up from Florida to do a clinic, and she was having some difficulty finding a facility, and I volunteered mine. And so that began our relationship. Felicia came up and taught. She's been up to me, I think it's 2 times now. We try to work around weather because she doesn't like cold. And here in Maryland, sometimes it's cold. Plus, she just had a baby a few months ago, so we were working around her pregnancy and her comfort levels. But we have her coming back again in March, which is when it's starting to get warm here again. She's an incredibly patient, quiet, correct, kind, thoughtful instructor. I watched, obviously, every single lesson that she taught, including having my own lessons with her. And I just feel like she's pretty darn terrific. And I'm really grateful to have her in my life. And what's even more fun is that Lydia rode in both of the clinics as well, and getting to see their relationship. And I just always think it's so exciting to be able to see when people are able to allow other people to grow and develop. And I think it's a real tribute to Lydia that, she was Felicia's first instructor, and now she's taking lessons with Felicia. And I also think it's a real tribute to Felicia that she used to be Lydia's student, and now she is able to create a learning environment for Lydia without being in any way overbearing or pompous.
Right.
So that's my friend Felicia, and I'm looking forward to our talking to her later on the podcast.
Yes, me too. Definitely. I can't wait to get to know her better.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, as I mentioned, when we opened here, this episode is sponsored by Horse Week, but I still wanted to go ahead and share a little bit more about what that's all about, because it is a product of our parent company, the Equine Network. And so we've all probably heard of Shark Week,
Yep.
Yep. Well, this is Equine Network's own take on Shark Week, but instead it's called Horse Week. So it will run from October 3rd through October 9th on streaming online on horseweek.tv. And you'll be able to stream all sorts of content. It's all free of charge. There's going to be training videos covering all different disciplines, Western English, there's dressage, jumping, all different kinds of things. And every night there's going to be a special feature. And some of those, there's one on Pony Club. Mm-hmm. There's one on the Temple Grandin Equine Center, which is at the Colorado State University.
Oh, I want to watch that one.
Yes, definitely. There are some pieces on I'm not familiar with them, but a Western boot and saddle maker icon named M.L. Letty. Apparently they're not the biggest in the world, but there's 3 or 4 generations of boot makers there. It's very cool. The Fort Worth Stockyards, IHSA, and even more. And I will tell you that I've seen the trailers for all of them, and I watched the Pony Club piece because I wrote a little article about it, and it was really good. I actually really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping that people will have some time to go and check it out.
So tell us again what we need to click on to get to this. So
it's the website is horseweek.tv, and actually it's the http:// there's no www there. Okay. And right now, if you go to it, you can watch all the trailers, and it's being updated kind of on a regular basis. They're getting the schedule together. And so there's going to be just a lot of different stuff. And it should, that, like I said, this is its first year. But we're already excited that how much it could potentially grow and take off and be an annual event for us.
Super fun. Okay.
Yes. So tune in October 3rd through October 9th.
Got it.
All right. So that's my PSA for the day. But now we have a question for you, Aviva.
Yeah.
And today's question comes from Judy. And she says that most of us talk to our horses frequently, and many horses respond well to the voice. I'm guilty of having conversations with my horse constantly. So
me too.
Yeah. But in the dressage ring, when you're showing, if your voice is heard, it is a 2-point deduction.
Yes.
Her question is, why is that, number one? And do you think that rule would ever change?
Well, Judy, I can definitively tell you that I have absolutely no clue why that's a rule. I know that it is a rule. I know that in Western dressage, they are permitted to use voice. So they can cluck, they can, say to rut or
really.
So I'm not sure why we classical dressage people are not allowed to cluck or use our voices. And having said that, I also can't answer if I think that will change, because I don't know what the reasoning is behind no use of voice. I know that as a trainer, when I'm working with riders with greener horses or greener riders, and they're working on developing transition aids, that I will frequently recommend that they use voice if their horses are well trained to the voice, for instance, on the lunge line.
Right.
Use their voice in conjunction with their aid so that their horse understands the aid a little bit more clearly, and then gradually phase out the voice so that it's simply the physical aid. So I don't know. It may have something to do with the fact that the aids are supposed to be invisible, and that it should look like a communication that's happening, with balance and rhythm and harmony and all of those kinds of things. And the use of voice would interfere with that. But I don't know. It's an excellent question. I'll have to ask some people and see if I can figure out an answer to that one.
Yeah. Well, it's been a rule for a long, long, long time too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not something recent, but I did not know that about Western dressage. So I've learned something.
Yeah. I think that they're lucky, because how many of us cluck?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
And it's, sometimes it's okay if you cluck down at the A end, because the judge might not be able to hear you. But I mean, I've been known to mutter under my breath when I think I'm far enough away from the judge, even if it's something just like "good boy." Yeah. I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I have muttered too. There have been tests that have gone very badly where I have done more than mutter. But I actually didn't get marked off for those. I think, possibly because I was already being taken pity upon because, things were not going well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and there were times, I don't know, I guess they don't take off for laughing, because there are times when I've busted out laughing because, because that's all you can do. There are points when you just go, oh, this is just a disaster.
I think that when you're trying to help your horse with your voice, that's when the points come off. Right. If you just, although I have to tell you, I've watched some riders who clear their throats or make noises that are maybe legitimate coughing or something like that. And I think deep down, they really have trained their horses to some weird noises. Because, we can train our horses to all kinds of stuff. Think about clicker training.
That's a way around, possibly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we can investigate a little further to see if we can find out a little more of the history. Although I think you're onto something with the whole invisible aids thing, because But that was a very good question.
Yeah.
For those of you out there, if you have a question, you can email me at sruff@equinenetwork.com or reach out to us on social media. And when we return, we'll have our conversation with Felicia Chandler. Watch, learn, and be inspired. A horse lover's dream is streaming to a smart device near you this fall. Horse Week, brought to you by Boehringer Ingelheim, is coming October 3rd to 9th, 2021. Riders and horse lovers of every level and discipline will enjoy profiles of incredible equine athletes, storytelling that celebrates the horse-human bond, heartwarming tales of horse heroics, and advice from world-class trainers. Tune in from the barn, office, or the comfort of your couch. Equine Network is making it easy to watch the week-long celebration from any smart device. Visit horseweek.tv for more information. Felicia Chandler is the head trainer at Chandler Dressage Inc. in Wellington, Florida. Originally from Kansas, Felicia started riding at age 8 and developed her love for dressage as a young rider. One of her notable accomplishments so far is being the winner of Robert Dover's reality TV show, The Search for America's Next Dressage Star. Upon winning the show, Felicia also was presented with the opportunity to be Robert Dover's assistant trainer for a year. After that, she was an assistant trainer for Arlene Tuny Page and worked as a flat rider for show jumper Kent Farrington. Today, Felicia's goal for Chandler Dressage is to provide quality training, lessons, and dressage horses to the dressage world.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce you all to my friend Felicia Chandler. Felicia has a training business in Florida. And I was very lucky, which I told you about earlier in this broadcast. I was lucky to meet her some time ago and get to know her and her training methods. Felicia's a little bit unique in the community in that she is a person of color. And I think that has changed the way that she is seen and changed the way that she has seen our community. And I'd like to get some of her insights about that. Also, for those of you who don't know, Felicia was in the, many years ago, there was a Robert Dover reality show about America's Next Dressage Queen. That's what I call it. I know that's not really what it's called. And Philesha was the winner. And so she had the opportunity to spend a year as Robert Dover's assistant trainer. So we'd also like to learn a little bit about what it was like working with a multi-Olympian like that. So without any further ado, hello, Philesha. Thanks for joining us. And tell us a little bit, how did you get interested in horses and riding? I know you grew up in Kansas. So how did you end up in dressage?
Okay, so I began riding at the age of 8. My grandmother decided to give in and let me start riding lessons. And I started honing in on dressage when I was about 15. We took a trip to Young Riders, and I decided that the dressage portion was up my alley, and that's what I was going to work towards. And that's when my love of dressage started to really, form.
Who were your mentors or the people who most influenced you as you started on your dressage journey?
Let's see. So my mentors, I always mention my first instructor, Lydia Wainwright, because she's the one who started me out with my beginner lessons and, really helped me gain my confidence and understanding of, proper riding, should I say. And then, of course, growing up at that point in time, Robert Dover was, on basically every dressage Olympic team that I, saw. And so, I just thought that he was the best ever. And that's who I, idolized growing up.
And how did you end up applying and then getting accepted to his search for America's Next Dressage Star?
I actually saw an article he had put in the magazine saying that he was going to take 2 riders and have them come to his farm for a month of free training. And who would not jump on that opportunity? And so I sent in my video to apply for that. And from there, I kept being updated on how the show was progressing, and it was going to, then be, more than 2 riders. And then it was going to be put in a position of where it would be a idol meet apprentice type thing. And then from there, it came about that it's going to be filmed to be put on TV. So, anyone who knows me from, a young kid knows that I was very, very shy as a child. And so I don't know, had it been presented in the beginning about being on TV, that I would have ever applied. So I guess, it was meant to be the way that it came about, because I don't know that I would have, applied otherwise.
What was the most exciting or interesting part about the program? What stays with you the most for that experience?
It was a very stressful time for me because, like I said, I was super shy. And so I guess the final day of, showing, to me that made it all worth it, because if there's one thing that anyone knows I love to do, I love the horse show. So I was in my element. It was like, oh, thank God. This is like this. I know how to do. Like, you put me in the shower, I'm happy. I'm ready to go. So I think that's where they finally got to see that that's I was in my element. In that moment.
What can you tell us about the horse that you brought with you to Robert?
Oh, Neon. You know what? That was not my horse. I don't know that people know that. My horse I had a gray Trakehner named Marcel. And that horse I owed the entire world to. He made every single one of my dreams that I decided and thought up in my head of doing. That horse made it come true. And I bought that horse as a training level horse. And I had to bring it along up to the upper levels because we could not afford, for me to have a fancy warm blood. But I had these big dreams. So he was my first horse that I trained for the FBI level. And I had taken a clinic and trying to get in preparation to go on the TV show. And the clinician had me turn one too many pirouettes and we strained the suspensory.
Aww.
So,
oh my God.
I actually hauled him down. We thought, he would be ready to go by the time we got down there. And I actually hauled him, down to Florida. But then the show was put on hold for a bit because of the hurricane that came through. And then as I, worked him down here, I realized that he was not 100%. And, he owed me nothing.
Yeah.
And so I actually called Robert and said, I would find a horse. You have time, I really want you to participate. Find a horse, and so I said, okay. And so then the search began for me to find a horse to use in the show. And it was Diane Rodrich who put me in contact with Carol Grant. And I didn't know at the time that Carol Grant had actually trained Robert before. And I went to try two horses at her place. One was a made Grand Prix horse. The other one was Neon, and he had only competed to 4th level. And, I was talking with Carol about it. It's like, well, it's kind of hard. Like, yeah, you want to take the Grand Prix horse, because who doesn't want to ride around on a Grand Prix horse? But then they let you know also, even once you are kicked off the show, you still get to stay and train with Robert. So you still got your lessons daily behind the scenes. So it wasn't like you got kicked off and then you weren't,
right.
You're gone. You still, you weren't on the TV show anymore, but you were still there, getting to ride your horse. And do lessons. And it was like, what's the better deal for you? For you to go around and learn how to push buttons on a made horse, or to actually get to train a horse with Robert Dover, And so I picked Neon, who was the 4th level horse, and took him to the show because in my mind, I thought I would be going home the first week anyway. So, it's like, might as well get the most of the experience,
So one of the things that you did also was that you worked with Kent Farrington riding his jumpers. So can you tell us a little about what that was like and how maybe that influenced your dressage training?
That's amazing. The jumpers are a whole nother, type of animal. And I, even though it wasn't in my lane, it was still a great learning experience.
Right.
And it's great to, to figure out ways how to get these horses to perform at their best. And I had, a lot of fun, being a part of that team and getting to see, some of the horses that I once rode and flatted, come along and become, great, contenders for Kent. And that's been, really cool to see.
I bet. So as Aviva mentioned earlier, and since this is a podcast and we're not on video, you are a person of color. And so could you talk to us a little bit about if that's affected your business as a professional and if it has changed from when you got started towards, versus where you're at now?
Yeah. I am African American. And it, in the beginning with trying to build my business, yes, it was hard. A lot of people look at you and they figure you could not, have the experience, with the horses, as well as your counterpart because the color of your skin, you weren't, born around horses or, been in a barn or, done this or done that. And I feel like it's a lot different now.
Yeah.
It's more accepting. It's more, it's not, people, don't doubt you as much because the color of your skin. Nowadays, I guess, well, and I shouldn't say now, it's more since this whole equality movement has taken place.
Yeah.
That is, has happened, that people are being held accountable for their words and their actions. And I feel like, now is more inclusive than what it has been. In some ways, I feel it's because a lot of people have been made aware,
right.
of, the differences, and other ways is, some people are just scared to make a mistake. They don't want to, how do I put it? They don't want to be the odd one out pretty much, so they're a bit more accepting.
Right.
And people aren't as vocal about, how they may truly feel, about a person of color, being a trainer or, at the show ring or things like that,
Right. Yeah.
Do you think that there are other biases in equestrian sports related to things like gender or financial status or religion, or is it a pretty clear-cut bias for skin color?
No, it's definitely a bias when it comes to as far as like financial status. That's a whole, another ball game. And that even goes in when you talk about people of color and horses. It's like, yes, people of color, but even within that, then the financial status comes along, to separate even the people of color. So yeah, it's different.
Did you find it different riding for Kent as an African-American woman than you did riding as a dressage person? Was there a difference in the disciplines?
Well, it was different because when I went to Kent, he already had another black rider there, another black female rider there. So I wasn't the only one.
Wow.
And then he also was the trainer to another black rider, so it wasn't as if, going to Kent and I walked into a barn, I'm the only black, like where when I worked for Robert, I was the only one, so, it was different, but not as, of course, being in Kent's Barn was awesome, and they're very like they're not. I've never had anything as far as like race or anything, in dealing with being at Kent's, barn, and but it's not in dressage. It's just different, because I feel like even if my skin had been a different color, my financial status would have still had me at the same place, that I was,
Right. Yeah.
Because people, down here, you just turn their nose up if, if you're not in a certain, status.
Yeah.
But even that has become so much better,
We're finally opening up, huh?
Yeah, I feel like that has become so much better with the financial status, because we have better, we are able to access better horses, and so then, like, we may not necessarily have the money to go buy the $400,000 horse, but we can buy something less and make it,
right,
into a $400,000 horse.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like it's becoming a bit more inclusive in certain ways.
Right. So then what do you think we can do to encourage, it's great that things are getting better, but what do you think we can do to encourage more diversity in dressage?
I don't have the complete answer, I do feel as though, having some of these younger riders that may not come from a background where they can afford the expensive horses still have access to great horses for them to show and get into the show ring and things, would be, a great thing, so that still up and coming riders see people who look like them doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
Programs like Dressage for Kids, where there are horses that are available to give people an opportunity they might not otherwise have.
Exactly. But you go, like, I've not gone to Dressage for Kids every year. I've not been involved with it, and I was never invited to be involved in the program. And so, I don't know but I know that from what I have seen and from, when they post pictures and things like that, I've not seen really any young people of color involved in those programs. I don't know for what reason, that has been the way that it has been, but that is something that I would love to change, whether it's, helping Dressage for Kids, in that aspect, or starting another program that, we're able to, get more kids of color involved into the sport. I get contact and I mentor, I feel like it's quite a few young men of color, in the industry, and I love it. But it's heartbreaking at times too to see their struggle, to see them when they work for, individuals, and the individuals don't understand, where they're coming from.
Right.
There's so many times like they have to go work and they're working like in rural places, but their employers and stuff aren't thinking about, I have a young man of color out here in the middle of nowhere, He has to see another person who looks like him, for, months and months, and it's like, they don't like think of what effect that has on that person, or, that he's out there in the middle of nowhere and like safety, that's what I get fearful of, when I hear I worry about, their safety, don't go out with the kids, don't do it, so, I don't know.
Well, it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah. But isn't everything?
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel
we have
like
a long way to go
forward, and we're taking the steps forward, and we're having these conversations, and that hopefully we'll get somewhere,
right.
With it. And you hear of the different scholarships and things that are happening for our riders that are people of color, especially the young ones. And I love hearing about that,
Yeah.
and even when one of my guys saw that there was a scholarship being offered, and it was for your goals as a rider, and or programs or this, that, and the other. And he was like, you should apply, because I want you to apply and then be able to, teach me, and bring, some of us there, and for you to be able to, teach us, and we come and train with you. And so, that makes me feel good,
Sure.
that, that they want, to, have me help them,
Yeah.
Well, they see you as a role model. They see you as someone who has managed to overcome the bias and be successful. And, it was your initial passion that got you there, because without that passion, I can only imagine the roadblocks that stood in your way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it, has to be about at the end of the day. It's your love of the horses. And that's basically, what carried me through, it's my love of the horses. And even in times when I would feel as though, this is too much, it's overwhelming, this sucks, people suck, it was, the horses would, be there. And on top of that, my grandmother, anyone who knows me knows my grandmother raised me, and we're very close. And, even at times when I could be like, okay, let's just hang up, the boots and go on about life, she wouldn't let me do that, because she knew how much I loved it, how much, joy, and how hard I had worked over the years to get to where I was. And, and she would always say to me in those moments, okay, I know you're tired, but do it for the next little black girl that comes along, do it for the next one, you're tired, and so, don't do it for you, do it for her, and so that's, sometimes that is what kept me going, and that's, also that keeps you in line as far as, your behavior and, how you carry yourself, she
Right.
would let me know, you have to be, better. You have to be, carry yourself in a way, because if you don't, then they are, will assume that all little black girls act like this, and you may, cut out the opportunity for the next little black girl to come along.
It's a lot of pressure for a little kid, huh?
It was a big, a big thing to carry, as a girl. But, I'm happy that, I had the opportunity to do so, and that it, was something that I could lean on to keep me going.
Well, from talking to you over the time that I've known you and reading the things that you've written, your grandmother sounds like a truly, truly remarkable woman. And you were lucky to have had her to shine a light for you. But she also, I know, is so incredibly proud of the way that you carry yourself and the way that you present yourself. And I think she's honored that you're her grandchild.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same. I feel, the same admiration for her, to have this woman that lived through so much, when you think of it, like she, got to meet her great grandparents and grandparents, those are people that, were involved, with slavery, and then coming into like her having to live through segregation and desegregation and, all the way, through all of these years and all of these moments, in our country, good and bad, and so, like to grow up with someone who has that range,
right,
and live through that much, there's a lot of knowledge that, comes out of those lips.
What words of wisdom do you have then for some of the young up and coming riders, regardless of, whoever they are?
Yeah. Regardless of, for me, I love to influence, anyone and everyone, regardless of their, whether they're people of color or not,
right,
whether they're old, young, whether they're amateur or pro. Like, to me, I just, I try and do what I can to help whoever I can. And I tell those kids that, just to keep going,
mm-hmm,
just keep going, keep trying, one foot in front of the other, don't give up, chase your dreams. I tell, so many, young people that, I'm in contact with, and I just tell them, just, go for it,
right,
go for it.
And my last question is one that we like to ask everyone, just to get their perspective. And so to you, what do you think makes a good horse person?
I believe a good horse person is a person that has patience and empathy. When you work with your horses, it should be a conversation. And, sometimes in a conversation, someone may say something that you don't want to hear, but you gotta have your ears open and be receptive, and be able to keep those lines of communication open. So I feel like a good horse person is going to keep those lines of communication open with their horses, and they're always going to put their horses first.
Well, and it sounds like you have certainly done that in your time thus far as a professional. So it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you a little bit, and I want to thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about your perspective and your take and your history thus far in the dressage world. And thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Dressage Today podcast. If you've missed any episodes or to subscribe, go to Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, please rate and review the show. Learn more and read in-depth training articles at dressagetoday.com, or you can visit our subscription video site, ondemand.dressagetoday.com. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Happy riding, and we'll see you at X. The Dressage Today podcast is a production of the Equine Podcast Network, an entity of Equine Network, LLC.